The set of Enter the Dragon fell completely silent. Everyone froze as they watched the two martial arts legends face each other. Bruce Lee stood calm and centered, his eyes focused like a laser. Across from him, Bolo Yeung, the massive bodybuilder known for his explosive temper, was breathing heavily, his face red with rage. Just seconds earlier, Bolo had lost control during their fight scene. His punches were coming too close, too real, too dangerous. The crew whispered nervously. They'd heard stories about Bolo's reputation. When he got angry, people got hurt. Bruce raised one hand slowly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Not anger, power. What happened in the next 6 seconds would become legendary. A lesson so profound that it changed beyond the lookout Yeung's entire approach to martial arts and his life. Before we dive into this incredible story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Trust me, you'll want to see what Bruce Lee did next. This wasn't just about two fighters. This was about control versus chaos, wisdom versus rage, and one demonstration that would humble one of the most feared men in martial arts history. Hong Kong, 1973. Enter the Dragon was supposed to be Bruce Lee's breakthrough into Hollywood. The first major martial arts film produced by a Hollywood studio with a primarily Asian cast. Everything had to be perfect. The stakes couldn't be higher. Bruce Lee was 32 years old and at the absolute peak of his physical and mental abilities. He'd spent years developing his revolutionary fighting philosophy, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. But more than technique, Bruce understood something deeper. True power came from absolute control, not from raw emotion. Bolo Yeung was different. At 27, he was already a champion bodybuilder and feared street fighter. His body was a weapon, 260 pounds of pure muscle packed onto a 5 feet 6 inches frame. In the gyms and back alleys of Hong Kong, people whispered his name with respect and fear. When Bolo fought, he fought with everything. His anger was his fuel. The movie's director, Robert Klaus, had brought them together for the underground tournament fight scenes. These were supposed to be the film's most intense moments, brutal, realistic combat that would shock Western audiences. Bruce would play the hero. Bolo would be the terrifying opponent who represented pure, savage strength. But rehearsals had become problematic. Bolo's fighting style was aggressive, powerful, and dangerously uncontrolled. During practice sessions, he'd already come too close to actually hitting several stunt performers. His philosophy was simple. Fight with maximum intensity. Let your rage drive your power. That's what made him feared. That's what made him dangerous. Bruce had watched this pattern developing for days. He'd seen Bolo's face turn red during takes, seen the real anger flash in his eyes when moves didn't go as planned. Bruce understood what was happening. Bolo wasn't acting, he was actually fighting. And in real fighting, that kind of uncontrolled emotion was a fatal weakness. The tension came to a head during a particularly intense scene. They were filming in the underground cavern set, dark, humid, with crew members packed around the edges holding lights and cameras. The scene called for Bolo to attack Bruce with a series of powerful strikes. Bruce would demonstrate his superior skill by avoiding and countering. But something went wrong. On the third take, Bolo's frustration boiled over. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the pressure of the Hollywood production. Maybe it was his natural temperament finally breaking through. His first punch came faster than scripted. Bruce barely slipped it. The second punch whistled past Bruce's face, less than an inch from contact. The third strike, a devastating hook aimed at Bruce's ribs, had real intention behind it. The crew gasped. Camera operators froze. Director Robert Klaus stood up from his chair, ready to call cut. This had crossed the line from choreographed combat to actual danger. Bruce's stunt coordinator started moving toward the set, concerned for his friend's safety. But Bruce didn't move away. He didn't call for a break. He didn't show fear. Instead, he stood perfectly still, his breathing calm, his eyes locked on Bolo with an intensity that was somehow more frightening than any rage could be. When Bruce raised his hand and said those 4 words, not anger, power, everyone understood something was about to happen. This was no longer about filming a scene. This was about teaching a lesson that Bolo Yeung desperately needed to learn. The underground cavern set felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with anticipation. Bolo Yeung stood there, his massive chest heaving, fists still clenched. His face was flushed red. Not from exertion but from pure unfiltered anger. In his mind, he'd been disrespected. The choreography made him look weak. The repeated takes felt like mockery. His pride, built on years of being the most feared fighter in Hong Kong's gyms, was wounded. Bruce Lee recognized the look in Bolo's eyes. He'd seen it countless times before. In street fights in San Francisco's Chinatown, in challenge matches in Oakland, in heated training sessions at his June Fan Institute. It was the look of a man who'd let emotion take the driver's seat, who'd confused rage with strength. "You think you're strong because you're angry," Bruce said calmly, his voice carrying across the silent set. "But anger is weakness pretending to be power." Bolo's jaw tightened. His hands trembled, not from fear but from barely contained fury. He'd built his entire fighting identity on that fury. When he stepped into the ring, opponents saw his massive muscles and felt his explosive aggression. They backed down. They lost before the fight even started. His anger had always been his greatest weapon. "Show me," Bolo finally growled, his accent thick with emotion. "Show me your power without anger." The crew exchanged nervous glances. This had gone beyond professional disagreement. This was personal now. Robert Klaus started to intervene, but Bruce's assistant director quickly whispered to him, "Let Bruce handle this. He knows what he's doing." Bruce walked to the center of the fighting area, his movements fluid and relaxed. There was no tension in his shoulders, no tightness in his jaw. His breathing remained steady, controlled. He looked like a man about to demonstrate a simple technique, not someone preparing to face 260 pounds of aggressive muscle. "The difference between anger and power," Bruce said, positioning himself in his distinctive Jeet Kune Do stance, "is control. Anger scatters your energy. Power concentrates it." He gestured for Bolo to attack. "Come at me. Use all your anger. Show me your strongest technique." Bolo didn't hesitate. He launched forward with the explosive speed that had made him famous, his right fist driving toward Bruce's face with crushing force. The punch carried all his frustration, all his wounded pride, all his need to prove himself. It was the same punch that had knocked out opponents in underground fights, that had shattered boards in demonstrations. What happened next lasted barely 2 seconds, but everyone watching would remember it in slow motion detail for the rest of their lives. Bruce didn't block. He didn't dodge dramatically. He simply wasn't there anymore. His body shifted with minimal movement, so economical that it looked effortless. Bolo's punch whistled through empty air, the momentum carrying him slightly off balance. Before Bolo could recover, Bruce's hand moved, not in a dramatic strike, but in a controlled, precise tap to Bolo's solar plexus. It wasn't hard. There was no visible power behind it. But the placement was perfect, the timing immaculate. Bolo's eyes went wide. His breathing hitched. That light tap had somehow affected his entire core, disrupting his balance and making his next movement awkward. He tried to throw a follow-up punch, but his body wasn't responding with its usual aggressive coordination. "Again," Bruce said simply, stepping back and resetting his position. Frustration building, Bolo attacked again. This time he threw a combination, left jab, right cross, left hook, the kind of aggressive sequence that had overwhelmed countless opponents. Each punch carried knockout power. Each strike was thrown with maximum force. Bruce moved through the combination like water flowing around rocks. Not one punch came close. His head would be inches to the left, then suddenly to the right. His body would shift backward, then forward. It looked like dancing, like magic, like something impossible. Then came the counter. Bruce's hand shot out, still moving with visible control, still not showing raw aggression, and touched 3 pressure points on Bolo's attacking arm in rapid succession. Touch, touch, touch. 3 taps, each lighter than a normal punch, but each placed with surgical precision. Bolo's arm went numb. Not from pain but from the precise disruption of nerve pathways. His massive bicep, trained through years of heavy lifting, suddenly wouldn't respond correctly. The arm that could curl over 100 pounds felt like it belonged to someone else. "You see," Bruce said, his voice still calm, still teaching. "Your anger makes you predictable. You telegraph your intentions. You waste energy on power you can't control." The crew watched in stunned silence. This wasn't a fight. This was a masterclass in martial arts philosophy, delivered in real time. Camera operators had stopped filming, too mesmerized by what they were witnessing to remember their jobs. Bolo shook his arm, trying to restore feeling. His face was no longer just red with anger. There was confusion there now, and the first hints of understanding. He'd thrown his best techniques, used all his strength and speed, and hadn't come close to touching Bruce Lee. Meanwhile, Bruce had countered with movements so controlled they barely looked like strikes at all. "One more time," Bruce offered. "But this time try to calm your mind. Feel the difference." Bolo hesitated. Something was shifting inside him. The anger that had always served him so well suddenly felt like a burden, like chains weighing him down. He took a breath, trying to center himself the way he'd seen Bruce do countless times during filming. He attacked again, but this time something was different. The rage wasn't driving the movement. There was still power, still speed, but it came from technique rather than emotion. His punch was more controlled, more precise. Bruce nodded approvingly, then demonstrated the difference. He moved to counter, but this time Bolo could actually see it coming. Bruce's shift was still faster, still more skilled, but it wasn't invisible anymore. When Bruce's counterstrike came, a controlled palm strike that stopped an inch from Bolo's chest, Bolo actually understood what had happened. "Feel that?" Bruce asked. Without anger clouding your perception, you could see the technique. You could learn from it. The lesson was sinking in, but the real demonstration, the moment that would change everything, was still to come. Bruce stepped back, his expression shifting from teacher to something more serious. The crew sensed the change. Even Robert Klaus leaned forward in his director's chair, understanding that something significant was about to happen. "You felt controlled power," Bruce said to Bolo. "Now I'll show you the difference between anger and true power." He looked around at the assembled crew, making sure everyone was paying attention. This wasn't just for Bolo anymore. This was a lesson for everyone present, about martial arts, about self-control, about the difference between looking powerful and being powerful. "Anger gives you a temporary surge," Bruce explained, his voice carrying clearly through the cavern set. "Your adrenaline spikes. Your muscles tense. You feel invincible. But that surge comes with a cost: tunnel vision, poor decision-making, wasted energy, and exhausted recovery." He gestured to Bolo. "You're already breathing hard. Not from physical exertion, but from the energy your anger consumed. Meanwhile, I could fight for hours because I'm not burning fuel on emotion." Bolo nodded slowly, unable to deny the truth. His heart was racing, his muscles were tight with tension, and he did feel tired despite the brief exchange. "Now," Bruce said, his tone becoming almost ceremonial, "I'll demonstrate what real power looks like. Not the appearance of power. Not the feeling of power. Actual power that comes from perfect control." He pointed to a heavy wooden board that had been used earlier for a demonstration scene, thick hardwood, the kind that required significant force to break. Prop masters had used it to show off Bolo's strength in a scene they'd filmed days earlier. It had taken Bolo 3 attempts to break it, and he'd needed a running start for maximum force. "Bring that board," Bruce instructed a crew member. The board was set up, held by 2 strong grips who braced themselves for the impact they expected. The crew formed a semicircle around the setup, cameras rolling again now that they realized this was becoming a historic moment. Bruce stood before the board, his body relaxed. There was no wind-up, no dramatic preparation, no visible tensing of muscles. He simply raised his hand to shoulder height, fingers extended in his iconic 1-inch punch position. "Watch carefully," he said. "Power doesn't come from anger. It doesn't come from tension. It comes from perfect alignment of body, mind, and intention." For 6 seconds, Bruce stood perfectly still. His breathing was calm. His face showed no strain. The only thing moving was the subtle shift of energy through his body, invisible to most viewers, but unmistakable to those who understood martial arts at the highest level. Then he moved. His hand traveled less than 6 inches, but the impact was devastating. The board exploded, not just cracking, but literally shattering into multiple pieces. The 2 grips holding it stumbled backward from the force that had transferred through the wood. Splinters flew across the set. The sound of the impact echoed through the cavern. Then silence. Complete stunned silence. Bolo's mouth hung open. He'd broken boards before, but never like that. Never with so little visible effort. never with such absolute control. The difference between his aggressive, anger-fueled breaks and Bruce's controlled demonstration was like comparing a sledgehammer to a scalpel. Both could cut, but one required massive force while the other needed only precision. 6 seconds, Bruce said quietly. That's how long it takes to demonstrate the difference between anger and power. You felt my controlled taps earlier. Now you've seen concentrated power. Same principle, different magnitude. He turned to face Bolo directly, his expression compassionate now rather than stern. Your body is strong, Bolo. Your technique is solid. But you're fighting at maybe 60% of your potential because you're letting anger drive you instead of control. Imagine what you could do if you channeled all that strength through calm focus instead of emotional chaos. Something broke inside Bolo at that moment. Not his spirit, but the ego structure he'd built around his aggressive fighting style. Tears welled in his eyes, though he fought to maintain his composure. In Chinese culture, being shown such a profound truth by a master was both humbling and honoring. Sifu, Bolo said, using the traditional term of respect for a teacher, his voice thick with emotion. Teach me. Bruce smiled, the first genuine warm smile the crew had seen from him all day. He placed a hand on Bolo's massive shoulder. A gesture that looked almost comical given their size difference, but carried immense meaning. That's why you're here, Bruce said. Not just to be in my movie, but to learn this lesson. Now you're ready to really begin. The transformation of Bolo Yeung didn't happen overnight, but that moment changed the trajectory of his entire career. Over the remaining weeks of filming Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee worked with Bolo not just on choreography, but on the fundamental philosophy that separated true martial artists from people who just knew how to fight. Every morning before filming, Bruce would arrive early to train with Bolo personally. They'd work on breathing techniques, meditation practices, and the mental discipline that allowed controlled power to replace reactive anger. The crew watched this unexpected mentorship develop, seeing the feared bodybuilder gradually transform into a more complete martial artist. The changes were visible on screen. In early footage, Bolo's fighting style looked brutal but uncontrolled. By the film's final scenes, his movements had evolved, still powerful and intimidating, but now with an underlying precision that made them more believable and more frightening. He'd learned to channel his natural intensity through control rather than let it control him. Enter the Dragon became a massive success, and Bolo went on to a long career in martial arts films. But he never forgot that lesson. In interviews decades later, he would still talk about the day Bruce Lee taught him the difference between anger and power. He described it as the most important moment in his martial arts journey, more significant than any tournament victory or movie role. Bruce showed me that real strength isn't about how hard you can hit, Bolo would say. It's about how precisely you can hit, how efficiently you can move, how completely you can control yourself. Before that day, I was strong but wild. After that day, I became a martial artist. The lesson extends far beyond martial arts. In every aspect of life, we face the choice between reacting with anger or responding with controlled power. Anger feels strong in the moment. It gives us energy, makes us feel righteous, pushes us to act. But like Bolo discovered, anger is inefficient. It clouds judgment, wastes energy, and ultimately makes us weaker rather than stronger. Controlled power, the kind Bruce Lee demonstrated, comes from discipline, practice, and self-awareness. It's about knowing your capabilities so completely that you don't need to prove them. It's about being so centered in yourself that external circumstances can't throw you off balance. It's about having the strength to choose your response, rather than being controlled by your emotions. This principle applies whether you're in a physical confrontation, a difficult business negotiation, a heated family argument, or facing personal challenges. The people who succeed at the highest levels aren't the ones with the most raw emotion or aggressive energy. They're the ones who can maintain clarity and control when everyone else is losing theirs. Bruce Lee's 6-second demonstration showed that controlled power is always more effective than aggressive anger. One was precise and devastating. The other was scattered and inefficient. One came from mastery. The other came from reaction. If this story inspired you to think differently about power and control, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever learned a hard lesson about controlling your emotions? What moment changed your perspective? Let us know. Your story might inspire others. The legacy of that moment on the Enter the Dragon set continues today. Every martial artist who studies Bruce Lee's philosophy, every person who chooses controlled response over angry reaction, every individual who understands that real power comes from within rather than from external displays, they're all carrying forward the lesson Bruce taught Bolo in those 6 seconds. Not anger but power. Not chaos but control. Not reaction but choice. That's the difference between looking strong and being strong. That's the wisdom Bruce Lee embodied and shared with anyone willing to learn. The question is, are you ready to learn it too?